But then we're constantly seeing things about Russia's imminent collapse. Well, where is it then? Why do people constantly say the Russian economy is about to collapse, much like the Russian bots or people say that Ukraine's front lines are about to collapse?
Yeah, when I see the narratives about Russia's economy imminently collapsing, typically that's something in a headline, but I don't see people arguing actually that Russia is going to collapse tomorrow. Rather, the information about Russia it's about trajectory. So Russia is on a trajectory towards ultimate collapse. I wouldn't say imminent, I would say ultimate. Because when you are continuing to funnel limited resources into a war, ultimately, and you see, different symptoms of that showing up within the economy, whether that is high inflation, whether that is Russia selling off their gold, a lot of other signals, we could talk about that forever. Those point to an ultimate outcome, but not an imminent outcome. And so the question isn't, is Russia going to collapse tomorrow and we're all going to get out of this? The question is, does Ukraine have enough resistance left to continue to hold long enough for Russia to collapse? And one thing I've said for a long time is everybody thinks Ukraine is fighting a short war, but I've always maintained Ukraine is fighting a long war, and they have been since the very beginning, since the front lines kind of stabilized. I think Ukraine was very realistic about their goals here. In the media, there's always a temptation to want to overpromise, especially in headlines, to get people to click and say Russia's going to collapse imminently. But I don't think that's the case. But I do think ultimately it's coming, if that makes sense. And we can see that in the progression of Ukraine's abilities to do damage to the Russian economy. Those abilities are only increasing, while the symptoms of internal economic decay in Russia are only becoming more clear. And I would argue that Ukraine's ability to produce the weapons that it needs for its own defense to continue holding the lines, those are also increasing. So those are the factors we look at, but the timing isn't something that we try to predict.
No, that's fair. You remind me of another conversation I had with a guest, and he said it's sort of like a terminal illness, right? You don't
Mm-hmm.
know when that moment's going to come, but you're on that trajectory because it's to this ultimate, as you say, ultimate collapse instead of imminent, which I think is sort of a quite a neat phrase distinction. But you know, just to be again, not to put water on the fire or whatever, but like a lot of Ukraine's ability to resist is dependent on continued Western support. Now, Europe has made it very clear their willingness to do so. America hasn't. And certain reports I've read today or headlines have demonstrated that there are rumors Trump wants to basically have the majority of the support off America by 27. He's literally going to start pulling assets out of Europe. Not necessarily out of NATO completely. I'm not saying NATO is collapsing, but if America's not willing to prop up the eastern flank, right, where they have a significant amount of troop presence, that's a problem, isn't it, for Europe because they have to balance their own interests or needs
Mm-hmm.
versus support to Ukraine. How do we, how do you manage I don't know, what do you think of that take, right? I don't even know how to phrase it as a question, like what do we do?
There's a lot of pieces there.